top 5 most hotly debated NFL draft prospects. If you guys have not figured it out, I know everybody in this room knows, I'm a draftnik. I love the draft. I'm fascinated by it. I even love sifting through the bullcrap of the draft, which is like, this guy, he doesn't like lemonade. How can you have him on a team? Like those kind of things that popped out. Like his girlfriend has an ankle tattoo. That means that he's into slutty chicks. And you're like, don't really know what that means. Like, it's just all the excuses. I love all that. I'm game for it all.
He's smoking marijuana out of a gas mask. And what does that mean as far as how he can block D linemen?
He's a damn good offensive lineman.
Yeah, it's been great.
He knows how to wear a mask.
Yeah. It tells me he's got creative solutions to issues. That's what it tells me. Yep. But anyhow, these are guys I've been through many draftniks, and it's interesting to see how people will criticize them or how hotly they're debated. Number 5, if you are not a fan of Western Kentucky, you may not have heard of this guy, but he is a top 75 prospect across almost everybody's draft boards. And some people have him way higher than others, and some people have him way lower. And he is getting comps to Deebo Samuel, Anquan Bolden, big guy, can do a lot of things, willing blocker, all those things you hear about, especially Deebo and Anquan Bolden. But the knock on him has been that he comes from the Western Kentucky offense, so he could not possibly learn how to run routes because it's in that Mike Leach, Bryles, Hal Mummy kind of thing, there's not a route tree. Well, he went to the Senior Bowl and perfected the route tree and has brought up the debate, and I saw this from Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl. There's a difference between what guys can do and what they're asked to do. So Malachi Corley can do all these things, yet he's getting knocked by the fact that he played in this wide open offense that didn't ask him to. But isn't that on the coaches to figure those things out as opposed to just rumor mill them away?
Yeah, I mean, if it's simply about route running, then I guess what you need to determine is how good of a learner he is. And I guess he showed that he's got some quick learning capabilities at the Senior Bowl. Now, that's a valid concern. We saw Corey Coleman get drafted very highly in the first round years ago, coming from the Bryles system, and they did not learn the route trees the way that a lot of other programs teach them to their wide receivers. It just wasn't a necessity, and that dinged them a lot. For all the great wide receivers they had, line them up, how many had great NFL careers? So Terrence Williams had a good little run. Kendall Wright had a good little run. Josh Gordon kind of counts, but then again, he derailed his own career. He would have been a superstar. But, a lot of other guys that I think as time went on started to get dinged because of that lack of being as polished as a lot of other guys were. And just, sorry, you're really fast, but now so are other guys, and they know how to run these various patterns. So I do think that's important, but if he can prove that he can learn it, then what's the holdup?
And I also wonder, some of those guys could have also been more mature, and focused, and not so edgy.
I think that was
they used
Corey's
the edge,
problem. I think,
because there's no reason why Corey Coleman should not have been an incredibly, barring injury, 8 to 12-year player in the NFL and successful.
The chip on the shoulder was a good thing at times, and then it ultimately became such a large chip that guys just toppled over from the weight underneath it. And I don't think that they managed it as well. It became almost like us against the world all the time.
And the chip on your shoulder has to be like a temporary thing. You have to be able to turn it on and off. And when you can't turn it off, then it's because a lot of times it's manufactured.
I'll never forget when Shock Linwood, who was going to enter the draft, who had a really nice career at Baylor, and he came to the workout, the pro day, and he was you could tell he was kind of just out there. And he had something in his nose. Again, people look at different earrings, whatever. And Corey Coleman walked up to him and goes, "Get that stuff out of your nose," or wherever it was. Get rid of all that. And he was being trying to be a leader at that moment. And that's not what Corey ended up getting himself into. He became sullen and almost too good to be coached.
Yeah. Well, and look, he wound up, again, in a bad situation where he had bad leadership in the Browns, or one of the worst organizations. Number 4, Bralen Trice from Washington.
God, he had a game against Texas.
And look, he had a great season. He's a run stuffer at defensive end. He's a really good tackler. But when you get to what modern defenses want, he's not so much of the classic get up the field, pass rushing defensive end. But he's one of those dudes that he's just got a motor and he's really smart. So I would worry about the other stuff later, but you see like the knocks on him is like he's not a pure pass rusher. I'm like, yeah, but try to get past him. That's the thing. Just try to get past him. Now, some of the things are valid and some are not, but try to get past Bralen Trice and tell me how that goes for you.
Yeah, he made not life completely miserable, but he made it tough on Ewers until Texas made that late run when Washington almost threw up on themselves. He was fantastic in that game in the Sugar
I'll tell
Bowl.
you, Christian Jones, the right tackle from Texas, or left tackle, or Christian Jones, the tackle from Texas, is in the draft, and he's a top 200 prospect. He's probably gotten knocked down like 5 draft picks just because of that game, because Bralen Trice just wore him out.
Yeah.
And,
I'm not sure who he was going against most of the time, but it seemed like he was coming off what would be the right edge on defense.
Well, Christian Jones was the left tackle. So, Bralen Trice was great in the playoff. I haven't seen much of the draft debate on him, so that's just news to me. But, I'll forever, as an Oklahoma fan, somewhat fondly hold the memories of his performance in that game close to my heart because it obviously disrupted a rival's ascent to the ultimate spot at number 1 in the college football rankings at the very end there. But no, he had a great game, and certainly he left a strong impression, although one they'd rather he had not left for Texas fans for sure.
Number 3, this one, and then we start to get into valid concerns here. Number 3, Amarius Mims, the tackle from Georgia. As athletic as you can get at the size that he is. I mean, does he look like a dude? Like if you just shrunk him down, he would be
picture on
lean.
the right. The one in the helmet, not because of his hairstyle, but the one on the right, that looks like he could be an offensive lineman, he could be a defensive lineman, or he could be a linebacker. He looks that good, body.
He's very athletic. But the knock on him is that he's only started 8 games because if you remember, Amarius Mims did not start for Georgia's national championship game team a year ago, and then was in the transfer portal, went to Florida State, was apparently about to sign there, so close even that they are in trouble for what they did on his visit, and then went back to Georgia, which makes it even stupider to get in trouble for a guy you didn't even sign. But he was hurt this year and only started 8 games. So he only has 8 collegiate starts, but the arrow is pointed up. This one I do think is a valid concern because as you'll see with the next guy on this list, I value personally a guy who's got a lot of notches on the wall in games that he's played.
So the knock here is he hasn't played enough?
Yeah, he's got 8 starts.
Okay, well, I think for what we've seen, that's fine by me. Less wear and tear on his body, but I can see where that's they're trying to find anything to pick apart with these guys. I mean, any and everything. So if that's the top of the list, then I think you're still feeling pretty good. But
some of that's floated out there too.
Oh well, sure. Yeah.
And remember, Parcells had some sort of calculation on quarterback starts that he would never draft a quarterback if he did not play in a certain amount of games or snaps or whatever it was in his career.
Well, I mean, there's things like route running that you can see on film, but then there's other things like, well, he's kind of an experience that, well, the film still looks pretty damn good. So there's definitely mixed messaging going on and some intentional knocks on guys during this part of the year for sure.
And look, part of the reason that he only has 8 starts is that the guys who are starting in front of them are starting in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
So, Georgia was so loaded that they can have a guy like Amarius Mims and not start him until his first draft-eligible year. So that's also the explanation on that. Number 2, and this one will be more hotly debated, Michael Penix. Look, the only knock on Michael Penix, and it's a big one, is that he had 4 season-ending injuries before finishing out his career as he did.
And he almost had a season-ending injury from just beat up against Michigan in his last game.
But Michael Penix is probably the best pure passer of all the quarterbacks in the draft. He's the most accurate. He's if you watch those games that Michael Penix played, I mean, he's got the NFL arm. He's got the NFL throws. They were running those kind of offenses and route trees, and he did not solely just benefit from having 3 or 4 NFL quality wide receivers at his disposal. He made them better. They made him better. It was a symbiotic relationship. If not for the injuries, you're talking about Michael Penix, in my opinion, up there with Williams, May, and Daniels. But because of the injuries, and this one is valid, you have to wonder, are we going to make this guy our franchise quarterback, or is he too beat up over the time?
What do you watch? What would mean more to you, watching him play against Texas, or what he did and was, of course, changed how he was pressured against Michigan?
That's not a question to have to answer because you're looking at both. I mean, I know it's for our circumstances, that's a question that if it wasn't 5:59, we could sit there and debate. But it's valid. But I think for a scout, it doesn't matter. You're looking at them both.
I'm looking at 2 Oregon games too that he kicked their ass.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're looking at more than just a performance here and there, and so I'm just really intrigued by the different conversations around him because I saw an interview not that long ago where he was being knocked because so many of his, even though he can throw a hell of a deep ball, but so many of his passes were within, with around the line of scrimmage, and so that was a knock of how much was run after the catch, how much was the receivers, those types of things. But he's definitely one of the more hotly debated guys that I've seen so far in the draft process. And he's so intriguing that somebody's going to take a bite, but it's just how early does somebody get tempted to do that? And then, of course, how does it translate over? But, he's polarizing, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about kind of how he's viewed here over the next couple of months.
And number 1, J.J. McCarthy. This guy's going in the top 15. He's going in the top 15. I would not have told you that, but if you read it, there is not
J.J. McCarthy.
There's not one NFL draft expert that will not tell you they're in love with this guy. And this goes back to my Malachi Corley thing. What he can do with what he was asked to do, and I guess the reasoning would be on J.J. McCarthy, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but Michigan was so good and so powerful dominating running the ball that they really, I'll use a golf analogy for you. Smokey, if you drive the green almost every time, do you need to take the pitching wedge out of the bag?
Yeah, or
probably
your irons, yeah.
Yeah, do you need to do that? You can play the whole thing with a driver and a putter, and that's maybe as good as they were at those 2 things, Michigan, and maybe that's why, and they feel he hasn't hit his full ceiling. He's only 20 years old. He's super athletic. He's got a big arm. He's a winner.
Doesn't turn it over a ton.
Doesn't turn the ball over a ton. So all those intangibles that you like, he has, but you've never seen Michigan have to rely on him to win a game. So that's what they don't know. And that's why it's so, as soon as I said J.J. McCarthy in the top 15, what was your reaction, Smokey?
Well, the reason
and
it
valid.
was, yeah.
Valid.
Yeah, no, because I remember when we had John Cooper on Friday, I looked at their mock and their top 32, and he's nowhere to be seen.
Well, also, John Cooper and our lads does it
45th to New Orleans.
Yeah,
okay.
A lot different than everybody else.
No, he
and look,
does.
there could be, but I think right now,
They don't
based
assign
on
players to teams. They rate the players.
Yes.
Well, this is a process, and guys are going to gain some steam and rise
Yeah.
up, and that's what J.J.
Especially a
McCarthy's
quarterback.
experiencing
Yeah.
right now is people are starting to watch his tape, starting to evaluate him, and starting to like what they see. I mean, he's very polished, and yet there's still a lot under the surface that we don't know how much better he can be, as Paul pointed out. I mean, his legs became a killer in that playoff. I mean, when they really wanted to just break the back and end that thing, J.J. McCarthy's had a couple of first down runs that were just immense at that time. Great leader. He's one of the, I'll say this, it's totally off topic, but he's one of the first guys I've seen where I just go, damn, I'm getting old. Because he's such a baby face. That's the first time I started to see younger people and go wow, they look way younger than I do at this point. But that's just me dealing with getting older. But for some reason, he's the one that I'm just wow, I'm getting old. He's such a young pup. But great player. And I've been, I guess, surprised somewhat to see how fast he's rising. But, when you see pointed out the things that are pointed out, like the upside, like the fact that we only had to see so much of him because of what he was surrounded with, the fact he played under Harbaugh, I mean, he's about probably as well equipped for the pro transition as anybody. I haven't heard too much of negatives about him other than just parts of his game maybe that people aren't quite so sure about because we haven't seen it.
He made plays when he had to make plays. Even though you wonder about his arm strength, he still made the throws when he had to under pressure.
He's got pretty good arms. I think the biggest thing is like Caleb Williams. You've seen him throw for 400 yards and do all the things he's done. Drake May, same thing. Jaden Daniels, you've seen the same thing. You get to Michael Penix, you've seen that. Bo Nix, for God's sakes, you've seen that. With J.J. McCarthy, name a start that he had where he threw for 410 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he doesn't have those numbers behind him. But again, if you don't need to drop the nuclear bomb, you don't.
Right. And you know what he's got? He's got that ring, baby.
Yeah.
Those other guys you mentioned don't.
Yeah.
So he played a role in that. But yeah, you're right. I think he's going to be one of the guys who is the most interesting to follow. Penix, I kind of said that about as well. But the quarterbacks are usually amongst the most interesting topics for obvious reasons. And so those two are definitely kind of the darlings of NFL draft debate, it seems like right now, for good, for bad, or just in the middle. But yeah, he's definitely seen his stock skyrocket a lot since the mock drafts that I was looking back in like the summertime before the season started.
Yeah, he won. All right, Paul, thank you very much. Very interesting. Pretty much.